Hey everyone, welcome to episode 138 of the Fitness Devil podcast. We brought Dr. Mike Israetel on today. He's one of our favorite guests. Everything that comes out of Mike's mouth is either intelligent, funny, or both. So we've got a bit of a wandering conversation. He's going to talk a little bit about some of the differences between the benefits of band training versus dumbbell training. We didn't want to get too heavy on technical stuff, but it's more of a philosophical discussion. A little bit about being careful navigating social media discussions, especially with the extremes now about the crowd that want to save every life at any cost and lock us down for 18 months versus the crowd that are like, let's open this thing up. We want haircuts, and sort of the straw man fallacies with those two positions. And then just some thoughts on, focusing on education and coming out the other side of this one more successful than ever. I hope you guys are all doing well. Reach out to us, me and Dean on Instagram, if you want to share any thoughts, or just let us know how you're doing, and hopefully you enjoy this episode.
Shut up and sit down.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fitness Devil podcast. Yet another episode in a recent string of unscripted free rolls that we've been pulling industry leaders on here. And today we got Dr. Mike Israetel. He's been on with us a bunch of times, and I hope by now you know who this guy is. He's one of the most intelligent and certainly he's the funniest person in our industry. And I'd love to see if anybody would be willing to step up and challenge that mantle.
Pat Davidson could possibly. Very similar humor.
Pat Davidson's my funniest person in the industry.
Yeah. Although
a lesser known Marcos Rodriguez is a little ace in the hole there, if you're familiar.
Andrew doesn't know him, but it's almost like that's comedy at its best.
So we've got Mike here because, I love hearing what Mike has to say on virtually any topic. There's obviously some fallacy in taking people outside their area of expertise and getting their assessments on, global pandemics and economic things and what have you. But nonetheless, what we got a whole bunch of people who are in the same or similar boats. Our industry is getting kicked in the teeth, and we got a lot of people who are worried about their livelihoods. And we want to see, well, first of all, Mike, what you guys at RP are doing, how you're navigating all this stuff, and any wisdom or philosophy, both to navigate this for the personal trainer or the enthusiast, but more so, how can they look to the future and come out on the other side of this one okay and thrive? So floor is yours, wherever you want to take this one.
Man, those are good questions. I'm not so sure I have anything resembling an expertly curated answer to those. As far as...
Let's start with how are you handling it at RP? Let's start.
What do you guys do?
Oh, yeah, that's all proprietary insider business information. That's not for public discussion. You guys know this. Come on.
I know insiders there. I know. I can get the deets if I want.
You think Caroline's double agent, triple agent. She's not even for RP. You think that she's giving you RP details, but she's really, it's a third, it's all together. I'm telling you that. It's like one of those really bad movies where like you think that you found the bad guy and it's a mystery, but the good guy, it's not even the good guy that's the actual bad guy. It's another person altogether. You're like, this movie sucks. Like, that's what RP is like.
What's Spencer's role then? Is it just to make TikTok videos? Is that
he is the world's best. So we hire him exclusively for memes. So at RP, it's a interesting thing because fitness is a relatively luxury good as far as the goods and services we offer anyway. So luxury goods tend to be reduced in their consumption during times of economic distress because like at the end of the day, you don't really need an app to tell you what to eat. As far as that term need can be understood in any incremental sense, this is an app that tells you what to eat and when. It's kind of like a very, very first world solution. And if you have bigger than first world or usual first world problems, you might not be tempted to use it. But the benefit to the RP thing is that our products are so cheap. It's not really like, you're not really forking out a ton of money, hardly any at all. So a lot of folks, I think, have been just uninterested in not subscribing to our services anymore because they're like, well, geez, I get this pretty not only value for super cheap, just doesn't, if I'm going to cut back, it's probably going to be in other places that are bigger spending. People aren't going to the gym, which is strange, but a huge, vast number of people are still exercising and still very, very interested in how to eat well, to some extent, maybe more than usual. Because if you have like a daily routine of exercise and a daily routine of eating, much of which you do outside the home and in conjunction with formal exercise, the questions about how do I eat well and how do I train sometimes become more magnified in situations like these, because all of a sudden these are mysteries and folks look to companies, and many of the very good ones, but including RP, to give them solutions to that. They're like, how do I train during a quarantine? How do I eat? And perhaps some sort of system of tracking and system of coaching can help keep me on track and be kind of like an anchor of sanity during times like this, right? Because like the last thing you would want if you have sort of any disposable income for this sort of thing is for your entire life to be thrown upside down. And then also your diet makes no sense. Like you have no idea what to eat. And also you have no idea how to train. So at RP, we had launched a women's only no gym training template. Like all you need is a pair of dumbbells of really any size. And we had launched that a year ago for the specific purpose of targeting a demographic of what happens to be mostly females that just like really aren't gym people, or maybe not gym people yet. Like the gym, to the three of us in this call or on this podcast, the gym is a place where we sort of probably grew up, and it's not scary. Admittedly, we're the scary people at the gym, though not in any attempt to be so. But for a lot of folks, specifically females, although culturally that's changing, which is great, a lot of females are still sort of like, the gym's a weird place, man. Weird place. Like if any of us walked into a ballet studio, because our society we happen to live in was like a huge ballet society, and don't you do ballet? #ballet. And we'd be like, what the heck? What? Like, I feel strange. Why do I have to wear this tutu? Well, a lot of people feel like that in gym clothes and at a gym where people are staring at them. And, most people at the gym aren't judging you because they're so selfish. They're busy judging themselves. But in reality, it's a strange place. So we designed these workout templates to help people just train at home. And they saw a pretty decent amount of success over the past year. And then all of a sudden when the quarantine hit, people were like, wait a minute, this thing is real? Why don't you make one for men? And to be honest, our first response was that we live in a patriarchy already, so we might as well even the odds. Just kidding. But it was a funny hypothetical answer I could have given. Like, oh yeah, like, or Mr. Man, you want more of society to be tailored to you? Well, here's how it feels to be on the shitty block of that one. It's like, oh, okay, well, had that coming. But in reality, we actually were. One of our team members kept saying, who is a female actually, she was like, why don't we have one of these for men? And we're like, well, because we have other projects we're busy working on. And to be honest, the male at-home training is just not seemingly to us a very lucrative thing at the moment compared to the other projects we're working on. Because, a lot more guys than gals seem to be like, if they want to get in shape, they're just going to go to the gym, right? It's obviously not all by any means, but maybe so many more that it was to us like, okay, first we make the woman's the female gym free program, and then the male will like sort of tackle that when we have a lull in other projects. And then so we were actually starting to work on that again about a month or two before the quarantine, because we had no idea there was going to be a quarantine, as did nobody else. So it was kind of cool that like when the thing hit, like I sort of looked around and we were like, crap, we should get this thing rolling out now because, admittedly for incredibly selfish reasons of wanting more money, duh. That's why we're all in business. But also because, there's a lot of people being like, what the hell do I do in my training? And approximately, 99% of all males in the Western world now couldn't go to a gym. There's a huge fraction of them who just sort of want to know what to do. So it took us just a few weeks actually to turn the product around and make it really good. And so now RP is selling male and female gym-free at-home programs. And these things aren't magical, like everything else we do. They're not magical. They just give you some insight and some structure, and take a lot of that creativity of like, because it's here's a real thing. This is actually pertinent to maybe personal trainers and other folks trying to get fit listening to this discussion. You could say to someone like, here's a pair of dumbbells. Here you are at home. design me a program that is both highly effective and not a giant pain in the ass, like where you're trying to replicate gym exercises that, awkwardly, where you could just be using unique exercises you would only do at home if you had dumbbells, which you would never really do in the gym because you have benches and all this other stuff. So the design of that is actually quite frustrating and by no means obvious to many people, including myself. Like when we first sat down to make the female gym free program, we did get very creative with some exercises because, for example, vertical pulling, out, gone, no vertical pulling. Like many people would be like, the way they would design, including myself, the way they would design an at-home dumbbell program would be just analogs of the regular lifts. Like, okay, can't do barbell rows, dumbbell rows. Can't do barbell press, dumbbell press, right? But at some point, that doesn't make any sense because if you only have the 20-pound dumbbells, presses are out as far as horizontal pressing. It's just not heavy enough. And then vertical pulling's out completely. What do you do for leg curls? There's a whole lot of nonsense, right? So what these programs do is they solve all those problems for you by giving you lifts to execute in very interesting ways that end up maximizing hypertrophy, limiting the amount of time you spend doing it actually, and just taking the confusion out and giving you an awesome periodized plan, which you can reuse. And it's just super cool. So we managed to do that. And other than the long-winded advertising speech you just let me give for free on your podcast, thank you for that. The take-home message there is that, first of all, a lot of RP's products have seemingly seen relatively good utilization during the quarantine. But secondarily, we've these at-home things, and we've done other outreach methods of videos and instructionals and articles. All that together seems to be pretty effective. And the best part about that from a big picture perspective is we're actually able to help a lot of folks just sort of have one thing less that's confusing and different about these times, right? Because for those of us who are in fitness and for those of us who maybe don't work in fitness, but fitness is a big part of our lives, if like we're in a really weird situation, like imagine being stuck in an airport or something. You can neither get the meals that you normally sustain you and keep you healthy and are the meals that you want to take you on your performance and body comp goals, nor can you train. That's like a special kind of hell. You guys know what I mean? Like for those of us in fitness, it's like, what the hell am I even? Like I can't train, I can't eat normally. Like am I just a regular person now? Like I don't even know how to live. That is sort of like this existential angst that I think a lot of folks experienced early on in the quarantine, and probably some still are. I definitely experienced it. What the hell? Monday, we go to Iron Sport and we do incline Smith machine bench press. Like that's just what we do, but we can't do that anymore. What the hell's going on? So I think through the diet and training stuff that we have at RP and that many, many other companies have put forward and folks are helping and trainers are helping with, video consultations and stuff, I think it's just for those people for whom fitness is a big part of their lives or an important one, it's just ease the transition and to be like, hey, look, listen, you're at home or wherever or you can't go to the gym, even if you're an essential worker, you're still out working, you can't go to the gym, no worries. Here's how you can eat, even with these constraints, and here's how you can train super effectively. And all of a sudden, for I think a lot of people, that's sort of a big like, okay, great. Once my fitness, situation is in order, man, like I can watch a few episodes of Netflix a day in the quarantine is not as bad as it could be if everything was thrown off and there was no guidance for fitness.
Real quick, I've got an idea for you. This could be a really versatile product.
Just got you in to give you this idea.
A nutrient breakdown of bats, because I mean that seems to be.
Oh my god! I didn't know that's where you're going.
Pangolins, and various other odd sort of things that get eaten. Well, certainly in China, but in other places. And I mean, forward thinking, we may want to take a look at what's being eaten in Venezuela, because with where the economy may go in the worst case scenario, people may need to have the macronutrient information from non-traditional food sources. So I don't know if you have any thoughts and run with that.
No, I don't want Mike's thoughts on that because it's going to be bad.
Yeah, the thoughts could potentially be bad. This will be airing at some point, so it can't be as bad as it would be in private conversation. But I will say this. The Venezuela diet is two things: incredibly effective at weight loss and illegal to sell because selling is illegal in Venezuela. So there you have it. It's something you get by state fiat. You have no choice. It's terrible.
Let's bring this back to the dumbbells, because I think it was you who like got on a tear about you can lift with these dumbbells. Was that planned? Like not planned, but like part of the reason why RP is awesome is because now you can be a figurehead and people can follow you and you'd be like, listen, you can do these things. Was that kind of the intent behind kind of telling people off in the sense that you can do this shit and still get big? You just need dumbbells. And people like lost their minds.
Which part are you talking about? People lost their minds. Was it the part that I said dumbbells work just fine? Or was the part where I said bands are not the greatest thing compared to dumbbells and just body weight?
I think it was that. I think if I can't even remember the exact, but there was like a few people that were like,
"Oh, I can."
Yeah, good. Let's hear it. Like, because we just had a podcast on Friday saying bands are still good and they're not the B team, which is fine. But let's hear your take on this this little war, because I think it's pertinent, because if you're at the top and you're saying these things, I think it's helpful for people to see different opinions on the matter.
Yeah, sure. So the bands situation, I was on Jan Fries's podcast, which is a podcast that targets very advanced thinkers in hypertrophy. And most of the people listening to his podcast are people that would like to replicate very, very robust hypertrophy outcomes at home. And the question was sort of like, bands, are they worth it? Or are dumbbells worth it? And are the... Actually, can you guys hold on just 1 second? All right, 1 second.
Seem to have a dog or maybe a murder happening in the background. I'm not really sure. I heard something.
It's definitely probably a murder. He talked about bats. And you did.
Anyway, sorry guys, I'm back. There was a bat loose in my apartment. I had to kill it really quick. Don't worry, the stew will be made soon.
Make sure you cook it. Like eating raw bats, I've heard bad things happen.
It sounds like we planned
nonsense.
When you were gone, we were saying there's probably something going on with bats, and then you came back and said, it sounds like it's planned, so perfect. We're keeping.
Yeah, great, exactly.
Wealthy after all.
So my perspective on trying to impose a very robust hypertrophic response was that, in my estimation, just one pair of dumbbells of an intermediate weight, which means you can do it with some serious modification for sets of up to 30 and 40 with your legs and your back, and you can use the same dumbbells for sets of 5 to 10 for like shoulders and biceps or something like that. So like for what many people a 20 or 30 pounder would be, right? Or a set of those. So I said one set of dumbbells, in my opinion, was better than a set of bands by a very real amount for the advanced hypertrophy trainee. And I got shit from this. I got so shit from two sources. I got a very reasonable amount of shit from my own co-worker at RP, Gabrielle Fandara. She was, we had several lengthy discussions about my opinions on this matter. And I came to what I think I assume is an understanding. She probably still disagrees with me, but that's, with RP, we have zero dogma, so a bunch of us disagree with each other. And it was all really good. And her reasoning on it was very well thought out. And she presented her opinions to me very sort of, maybe not palatably, but made sense what she was saying, where she was coming from. The other person who really, publicly anyway, that I knew had a real big issue was Lyle McDonald. But he's a fucking idiot. And he's a fucking idiot, coward, asshole. Any number of bad things I'm very comfortable saying about him. And also his opinions on most things are wildly irrelevant, because if you try to ascertain what it is he actually means, he never clarifies that. He just insults you with what I would also say is a very poor ability to insult people cleverly. As evidenced by my podcast where I debated him with Steve, and he had basically dick to show for his usual online cleverness. So in any case, as far as I'm concerned, there's really one sort of stream of thought. And the thought was that if bands, was I really claiming, so what I said was on Jan's podcast was like, look, if you aren't going to buy a set of dumbbells and you think that that's too much money, which is a very, very fine opinion to have, then bands are almost certainly not worth your money, because they're just very, if the money thing is such a big deal to you, which is totally understandable, then you should just do plyometric workouts or whatever, so what is it called, calisthenic workouts at home, and just don't even bother with the bands. And so the protestation about that was that, look, am I saying that bands are not any better than training with just your body weight? No way. They're absolutely better by a long shot, right? But they do cost money. Let's say a set of bands cost $20, right? Okay. So $20, And you get a pretty decent effect out of them. Way, way, way better than training at home. On the other hand, a pair of dumbbells costs, I don't know, $60 or something like that. That seems reasonable. And mind you, this isn't like an adjustable super crazy dumbbell set, just literally 2 dumbbells, right? And they cost much more money, 3 times more money than the bands, but they, in my estimation, are much more hypertrophically inducing for advanced individuals to whom the money makes sense to spend to begin with than bands, right? So for a variety of reasons we could get into here if you guys like. The force curve for most banded exercise is stupid and backwards. The amount of creativity people think they have with bands is incredibly limited by when you're just at home, because you can't pin the bands to a variety of things, right? Like, you don't have a rack to support bands, so already you're sort of screwed. If you don't have a pull-up bar and you have bands, like, that goes out the window. So it turns out that in my opinion, dumbbells, if you look at it as a variable known as price performance, it should really be named performance price if we're being super technical. But price performance is a concept from economics, and you could say also computing. Whereas, like, so for example, the price performance means how much performance do you get versus the price you're paying, right? That's all. That's also, for example, a computer in the 1990s was like awful in performance and expensive as fuck. And nowadays, the same computer, you can't get the same computer, but if you want the same performance, the price is like free or pretty close. And if you want 50 times the performance, the price is like a tenth of what a computer used to cost. So, like a shitty smartphone's like $200, and it's way, way, way outperforms a computer from the 90s that was 2000, right? So the price performance is the division of performance by price.
Way more powerful.
Here's the thing.
We're putting rockets on the moon back in the 70s and shit, right?
Oh yeah, for sure, right? Yeah, that's like a fucking, today's toaster can fucking do the calculations required to do that. So it might be that modern refrigerators have more computing power than the Apollo 11 capsule. That may actually be true. So in any case, it's like the computer that figures out if it's filled your water bottle yet. So in any case, what ends up happening is if we have performance divided by price, in my view, the landscape for the 3 options of training at home with nothing, training at home with bands, and training at home with dumbbells looks like this. The price performance for training at home with nothing is actually pretty good because the performance is not that great. You don't get as much out of that training. So you get plenty. You don't get as much out of that training as you would with bands or with dumbbells, but the price is literally 0, right? So that's hard to beat. Now, I'm not saying the denominator in this case should be 0 and thus the price performance is infinity, right? Because you can still calculate costs in many other ways, how much time you spend doing it, so on and so forth, but it's hard to beat 3. So we have a pretty decent price performance, not that great, on the one side with training at home by yourself, no bands, no dumbbells, just you and your own agony. Then we move over a little bit to the right and envision where on that curve of price performance bands are. And bands make your training a little bit better, but they cost money. And if you are very financially constrained, and I'll give you an exact figure for financial constraint, enough to where a $20 to $60 purchase weighs down on you, which, by the way, is the same general range, because a response to this could be like, well, dumbbells are $60, bands are $20. Isn't that great? Look, if $20 is a lot of money to you, there's no universe in the real world in which 60 is not also a lot of money, right? Period. So if someone's like, I'm going to go with the bands because they're cheaper, that person either just doesn't care a ton about their fitness or is so financially constrained that, in my view, paying the $20 is probably not a good idea because the price performance of the free at home no bands is so close, right? It's still a very effective way to train. So for bands, you get a pretty decent bump in performance, but because it costs $20, the price performance, in my view, of bands for an advanced trainee may be lower or not much higher than training at home with nothing. So what I said on that podcast was, look, if $60 dumbbells or whatever is too expensive for you, which is totally understandable, then just doing calisthenics is probably your best bet. Because on price, I didn't say the price performance part, but because on price performance, I think doing free workouts at home, completely free, probably beats it. Not on performance, right? You don't get as good of results. But ratio to price, probably better just not buy anything at that point. But here's the big kicker. If you are going to buy anything, then the $60 dumbbells are, yes, more expensive for sure, but give you so much of a bigger yield, especially if you're advanced, which is when bands really start to have huge limitations. And mind you, my podcast content, or the audience for Jan's podcast, was folks that are more advanced. If you are in that position, then dumbbells have a price performance higher than bands and similar to, if not better than, at-home training. Now that, the at-home training without any bands or any dumbbells. So that price part is, the variable isn't just linear of like how much it costs. It's your ability to afford relative to other priorities and finances in your life. And that performance part isn't the same for all people either. It's how much yield relatively to other things do you get out, which is very different for beginners versus the advanced. So for example, if a beginner person or someone who's just has been lifting weights for like a year or two, to them, bands would actually make sense, and what I would say would be roughly equivalent to a dumbbell purchase. For more advanced folks, I don't think that's the case. And if you're more advanced, you probably have a lot of the economic means within your overall spending to be prepared to spend a little bit more on fitness, because that's probably, you being advanced means you probably value fitness to a considerable extent. You're willing to show that with your money. Now, if you do not have the financial means to purchase 60-pound dumbbells, in the sense that you would find that purchase incredibly constraining or literally impossible, I don't think it makes a whole lot of sense to purchase something that is $20, because if you're that financially constrained, mind you, that's a one-time purchase of $60, right? The vast majority of the world spends more on that in 1 month for just sheer piss-away entertainment, right? If $60 is a lot of money to you to spend on dumbbells, and you claim to be super interested in working out and you're not living in a third world country, the $20 bands, in my estimate, are a fine idea, but not as good of an idea. So what I would say is the dumbbells win that one. And then at-home training for advanced people who are really financially constrained takes a second place. And then the bands take a third place. So that generated the amount of, because it kind of sounds in a way that I'm saying like, look, either fucking pay $60, you poor motherfucker, or don't even bother. You're just a recreational piece of shit.
That's what
it
comes
sure
out.
can seem like that. Yeah.
So, like, this is what sucks, and like this is why it's kind of funny having you on, because you're kind of open about this stuff. But you go on and put something that's like helpful, and then everyone shits on it, and then you can't get out of it unless you explain it like that, which is like a lot of work. So like, where's and I don't even know if there's a question here, but like, how do you handle that shit? Because you have to think about things, but you just want to help, and you're just saying shit, and then you get shit on if you do, and you get shit on if you don't. Like, how do you like, what's your thoughts on that? Because like, that's a long answer to like say, I just gave you something for free. Like, why are you so mean?
So I have a multi-part answer to that, as you may have predicted. One, I don't really so much care if people are upset at something that is absurd and I don't think was ever meant in a harmful way, because it for sure wasn't on my end, nor is it causing me harm, right? Like if I like accidentally knocked over an old lady, I would feel fucking awful. Like, that gut feeling, like terrible, I did something super wrong feeling, that, right? I don't get that from making posts that I think are both defensible and true, right? And incredibly well-intentioned. So when people are like, oh, Dr. Mike's an asshole, I'm like, well, I know that's not true. In this case, anyway. Generally, it's for sure true. But so all of a sudden, it's totally cool. Like if, I don't know, if there was like a murder in the neighborhood and the cops came and they wanted to investigate it and talk to me and I was a suspect, I'd be totally cool about it because I didn't kill anybody, like easy, sweet. I'll tell you whatever you want. I would love to help, as a matter of fact. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I actually don't get a whole lot of people who are confrontational about it. Lyle never brings the shit to me, or almost never. He just talks about it in his little bullshit backwater forums or where people fanboy the fuck out of him. And most of the other people never tag me or anything like that. The way I come to find out about these things sometimes is that some folks will like send me a Facebook message and be like, hey, people are talking shit on this forum. And sometimes I'll like go look through and they'll be like, oh, okay, like, some of this makes sense and maybe I try to clear it up. But a lot of times it's just like a bunch of incels being like, yeah, he's a total cunt and this and that. And the thing is, like, in real life, not that this matters a whole lot, but in real life, these people they wouldn't raise their fucking brows at me. And that doesn't make me special or tough. They don't raise their brows at anyone. They don't fucking leave the house. The quarantine didn't change shit for them. So when a ton of fucking, like, Reddit incels or the people are making, quote unquote, like, taking issue with your statements, like, don't worry. They take issue with, can you Can you guys hear me still?
Absolutely. I'm just killing
Okay,
myself.
sweet. Say that again.
I'm just killing myself laughing.
Try not to laugh on the thing because then
Sorry. Okay.
it would overshadow what's
yeah. So basically, like, how do I say this politely? I'll say it impolitely. These are the people that have Instagram profiles with no picture, no posts. I don't actually consider them people. If I can't tell you apart from a bot, you're a fucking bot. So if you get upset, no, it's okay. Robots get upset. They're not really upset. And if you want to show me that you're a real life human being and what I said upset you, have a fucking picture on your profile and be a real fucking human being. Put at least one picture of yourself up in your kitchen and be like, hey, I'm alive. And then bring your shit to me. And I promise you, in almost every case, I will hear what you have to say and I will represent my argument in a reasonable way that is like, hey, look, this was my perspective and I totally didn't mean to shit on anybody. But if you got that perception, I totally see how you got that perception. But here's what I actually think. And if after that interaction they still find what I said offensive, then hey, look, listen, sometimes we all get upset, and that's okay. So there's not a huge downside of these sorts of things for me. People talk that shit, like it doesn't. You know what I mean? Like people always talk that shit. It's a bunch of they do it behind your back, they do it in front of your back. It's okay.
That's the way I look at it. I was going to say it ends up becoming an us versus them thing, but then is that like helpful to the bottom line? Because at the end of the day, like that was like a process in which people had an opinion about, but then you still have a product that kind of you believe in. And then does that translate into people like supporting you more, even though there's a lot of this noise? Like, does that make sense?
So the fraction of people that buy products in the fitness industry and the intersection of them with like the incel community is fucking tiny. As a matter of fact, most of those people just pirate shit anyway, right? Like I've had those people message me about books I've written, and I'm like, oh yeah, like when did you buy your book? And they're like, well, actually, I got it off 4chan. I'm like, oh right on. Like you're fucking, that's kind of callous. You'd be like, hey, what did you mean on chapter 4? I didn't pay for your book. Like, and it's great that they fucking pirate away, But like, I'm not so worried about selling my products to these people because they don't fucking buy the products to begin with. And to the extent that I am concerned about selling products to them, when I communicate an idea a bit more vociferously than usual, it stands to reason that I might alienate some people. And when I was podcast, and just when I'm on podcasts in general, there are times when I explicitly speak for RP, which I usually say, probably always say, and there are times when I'm speaking for myself. So there's like this, entity of like Dr. Mike, whatever fucking bullshit that sits separately from RP, and I see all kinds of fucked up shit. And actually, Gabby had an issue with this, a very good one, when she brought up to me that she's like, well, you're speaking for RP, and not all of us in RP think bands are dog shit. And I was like, well, I totally hear you, and that's a very, very pertinent concern. My view of the matter was I was speaking for myself and not trying to represent what everyone at RP thought, but I may have assessed that situation incorrectly. So there's definitely a limit to how sort of in your face unapologetic I can be, and I usually just try to be reasonable. But the way I said those things combined with the way they were interpreted selectively by people sort of made a little bit of a mini perfect storm of Mike is a real unreasonable piece of shit. And I might be a piece of shit. I'm rarely unreasonable. Even if my reasoning is wrong, I'm still trying. So yeah, like I think at the end of the day, the way you get most profits is you make awesome products and you politely sort of show them to people and say, hey, this could help. Would you like to maybe give this a shot? And they say yes. And then when you're on someone's podcast talking about really advanced hypertrophy and 3 or 5 people on the internet get upset at something you said, it's an opportunity to clarify some things, which I did on my own Facebook, by the way. And nobody fucking commented on that post. I was fucking pissed. I was like, I took time on that post. I talked about it because I was like, y'all motherfuckers want to shout out the title because they were saying, I think Lyle and a couple other people said that I was like an elitist, a wealth elitist. And the thing is, like, I've been poorer than Lyle will ever be, hopefully, unless the United States economy collapses like to infinity. Because I grew up in the Soviet Union. Like, I stood on actual bread lines. And I shared like a whole story of my childhood of like, you can call me a lot of things. Wealthy elitist will not be one of them. Like, you can call me that. It's just not true. And then I gave my perspective on that. I do think that people of very limited means should be very careful with their spending, which is like rocket science if you're an insane person, but completely obvious if you're anything else. So at the end of the day, like, I'm comfortable with my opinions. And because I think I'm right, and because I'm very open to being shown that I'm wrong, I have nothing to lose from engaging with anyone or putting my views out. The worst possible thing that could happen is someone really, really shows me that I was wrong, and they'd be like, dude, thank you so much. I don't have to be wrong anymore. I completely rescind my earlier views and replace them with these views that I'm now inherited from you. Thank you. And the other thing that can happen, and there's a spectrum in between, is they're just completely wrong, and I stand my ground, and not saying my ground of like, oh, I'm never going to admit to you shit. I'm just like, oh, I still think I'm right. And everything you said is fucking wrong, respectfully. And I'm still right. So anywhere in between is super awesome for me. Like, I'm not attached to any opinions, period. It just at all.
Let's actually take a couple of those things and can merge that in another place. But you being very reasonable in discussions, and I've certainly found that.
Trying.
We're talking about economics and stuff too, and there's sort of this weird debate that our industry has popped up with, and I find there's a few individuals who are very extreme on one side, where they're basically saying that if you say anything other than we need to keep this shit locked down to save every life, you're a complete fucking monster. And then there's the other end of the spectrum that says, fuck everyone, just open it all up. Those are the extremes, but I find those two sides are yelling at each other. But the side on the, we'll say the left, the ones who want to save every life possible, despite the fact we have a global pandemic and we're supposed to be flattening a curve, they're pretty much screaming at the middle ground, who are like, hey, I don't have a paycheck. I can't pay my rent. Maybe there's a reasonable middle ground. And you're seeing a lot of really nasty shit there. So I don't know, just like, I know where your thoughts lie on this one, but perhaps some thoughts as to navigate that. Just one quick thing I was going to say is, I'm tending to discount the ones who are financially very, very secure, but yet screaming at everybody else that the only way is, no, we've got to keep us locked down for 12 to 18 months until we get a vaccine. We can't risk a single life, when these same people aren't screaming about getting every car off the road because of a car accident, or all this lifestyle stuff because of heart disease and cancer and other preventable diseases. Last thought, I'm going to get yelled at for going, well, those things are totally different than a virus that can spread rapidly. It's like 2.5 million Americans died last year from all-cause mortality. And one of the issues I have with there being actually some validity to that comparison is that where the fuck were you caring about all the shit about all these people? All of a sudden, this one specific thing is disproportionately where you're having a screaming match about. Anyway, floor is yours.
Yeah, listen, I hear you on that. So the crazy people on the left and the right are, I suppose, interesting to watch. And it's a good way to pass the time when you have extra free time during quarantine, is introspection into insanity. Or I will say that a lot of folks who seem crazy and maybe are exhibiting some decent insanity are the huge fractions of them. I'm not willing to posit what fractions, but huge, are coming from, in every understandable way, an absolutely really, really good place, right? The crazy left wing, let's shut down the economy forever people, most of them honestly believe that any alternative short of that results in mass death that could have been completely prevented. Now, like, if you are on the other side, if the argument was really that simple, we know it's not. But if you honestly have assessed the situation, have come to the conclusion that anything short of approach A results in countless amounts of preventable, needless, in every sense of the word, mass death, and if you understand that and you're not for option A, I mean, your views are pretty reprehensible, right? Like, they should be. So when people honestly believe that the super quarantine, we could call it, or super lockdown, is absolutely unequivocally the best possible way forward, I absolutely see where they're coming from as far as their passions. And I mean, look, fuck, like, if we had, like, make a really stupid analogy here. Let's say, like, oh yeah, actually, this was in a movie. What was it, Independence Day? Remember Independence Day? Do you guys remember that movie or no?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, thank God. I was going to say, oh, I never saw it. I would have just hung up the phone.
Well, we're from Canada though, so like literally we don't give a shit. But like,
right, but bro, the aliens attack all of us. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's true.
Wouldn't it be funny if, like, during that time, like in that universe, like LA is fucking nuked by that laser, and then New York, and then Toronto's just totally normal day. The aliens were like, oh yeah, fuck Canada. Anyway, yeah, I guess we'll get there later. Whatever. So in that there was like a fake news. It's all fake, right? It's a movie. There was a news announcement where, like, folks, we urge you to please not fire your weapons at the alien ships, because this was before they knew that they were violent. Like, that's the kind of hillbilly dumb fuckery that has been shown on the other side of this. And it's like, if it was like, if aliens really did come to Earth and people were shooting at them for no good fucking reason, I myself, you two would be just as livid on Facebook about people firing their guns at fucking alien ship. But do you understand you could provoke a fucking extinction level war? What the fuck is wrong? Like, there's no right answer to when that's a good idea. Like, don't do it. So to some people who have analyzed the situation in their own way, often with buttressed by a selective reading of expert opinion and CDC and stuff like that, can come away with the idea that anything short of a massive lockdown is the best possible thing. And I absolutely see how they could be really irate. I mean, and then to fuel that fire, there's completely insane, I don't even want to call them right wing, they're right wing, but like not throwing the intellectual rival at right wing, like just insane conspiracy theorist. Fuck, man, it's tough. So like, I seem to be in the fitness industry that I give the left the most shit. That's actually true because I expect more of the left, because people on the left are usually smarter than people on the right. Not always, usually. I expect more from them.
And I'm
There's people on the
for the same.
Say what?
I'm harder on the left for the very same reason, because
right.
they are supposed to have the moral high ground.
Right, correct. And they love science, supposedly. So waiting on that. But in any case, there's people on the right being like, I don't care how many. What was that guy? I saw a couple people on Facebook being like, "Let the old die." Like, what the fuck? Like, really? You don't really mean that, because if you really mean that, maybe you could say, "Let the weak die." And then if you really mean that, I'm gonna show up to your house and fucking kill you because I'm stronger than you. Oh, but that's not cool, right? So at some point, there's enough people on the other side to sort of like incentivize the crazy pro quarantine forever leftists to like really be like, no, you don't understand. We have to yell at people on Facebook. So I get it. The nuance comes in where mostly through a knowledge of economics, probably, but not a ton of high-level, super crazy econ, just the understanding of costs and trade-offs. And people like will say, for example, I was engaging, unfortunately, in a Facebook discussion yesterday where a Facebook friend of mine had a problem that Georgia, the state of Georgia in the United States, was going to be like releasing people to go to work sooner than other states were. And supposedly to save money, because they were going to run out of money for unemployment insurance. They're just not going to be able to have any money to pay people. And then so this gentleman very respectfully found this to be at odds with what he thought was the right idea. And I came in and I said, is the money saved by not like taxing people more to pay for unemployment? Could that money be spent in a way that supports life even more than the lives saved for letting people return to work? That question, by the way, never went answered. But a follow-up question from another person in the thread, this girl asked me, she's like, so do you value funding more than human life? And I wanted every part of my being to be like, yes, I'm going to make this debate very easy for you by telling you that I'm actually Hitler reincarnated. But like an evil capitalist version of Hitler who's like greedily rubbing together dollars while physically sitting on decaying corpses of the poor from whom I extracted that money for some as yet unknown physical process, right? I love it when human life is lost for money. Like, I just want to be like, you honestly believe that people have these opinions, but then the right-wing incels are like, yep, that's what I actually believe. And you're like, fuck, well, I'm not one of those people. So the reality is that like any amount of money or resources diverted to a certain problem or to prevent a certain number of deaths is by definition money and resources, including time resources, that could have been used to prevent deaths or extend life in many, many other ways. I'll bring up one super quick example. If you really believe that quarantining to save life, let's say you say, okay, like if 10 million Americans were going to die in the next month if we didn't quarantine, should we quarantine? Of course we should fucking quarantine. For the love of God, 10 fucking million Americans, right? Or Canadians. Nobody cares about Canadians. I'm just kidding. Please,
Well, that's
please take this.
So that's a lot different.
For sure, right. So then you would say, okay, what about 1,000? If 1,000 Americans are going to die of something, is it worth the quarantine for 1 month? Like, and we're talking about like, let's say economic activity reduced by, $100 billion, easy, right? A month of Americans not going to work, $100 billion, no problem, right? It's okay. It's 1,000 people. What about one person? One person's life can be prevented if we quarantine, or one person's death can be prevented if we quarantine the United States for 1 month and say, okay, yes, because any life, all lives matter in the sense that any number of lives matter. Like one person, we should do everything we can to save every life, because people actually say these things. These words come out of their mouth and never inspected them at a deep level to understand that they're wildly false. So, okay, let's say, okay, that person's life is now worth $100 billion. Makes sense, right? It worth not in the sense of a moral worth. Lives don't have a moral. Lives are infinitely worthwhile morally, but in the real world, things cost money, right? So we're giving up $100 billion to save this person's life. Let's say aliens kidnapped them and gave us a month-long ransom. They're like, we're going to kill Jim Bob from Oklahoma with our phaser gun, but then we're going to leave, and you guys are all fine, unless you pay us $100 fucking billion by stopping your economic activity. We're reducing it by 20% and is working on our alien spaceship, and we're never going to pay you guys for that, right? People say, yes, absolutely, you have to save Jim Bob. Save Jim Bob. Okay, interesting. For that $100 billion, and this is the only example I'll give because everything else can be extrapolated off of it. We can take that $100 billion instead. Sorry, Jimbo. We are going to use it to help accelerate clean drinking water and vitamin mineral enrichment programs in Africa. And through $100 billion fucking dollars of that money, we are going to give life and health to tens of millions of people. So let's go back to the COVID-19 situation. How much economic activity are you willing to suppress for how many lives saved is a fucking terrible question to have to ask. But it's not a question you have to ask in terms of money for money. You can ask it in lives for lives. So instead of suppressing our economy by 20%, maybe we could suppress the economy by 15% and take 5% of economic activity and fucking donate it to Africa to clean and enhance nutrition. And then we will be saving and creating and enriching way more lives like that than if we did almost no virus control whatsoever. Now, is that morally the right thing to do? Are governments responsible to their own citizens, to, people, older people are at risk? They've been paying taxes for fucking forever, and now the government's just going to give money away to other people. Oh, you guys aren't important anymore. Thanks for this money, by the way. Go fuck yourselves. Those questions are entirely moral, ethical questions, but they're no longer financial questions of any kind, right? So the question is never, in these cases, is it money versus saving people? It is how do we best go about a combination of saving people and making sure we're not spending so much resources saving one group of people that we neglect to potentially understand these resources can be used to save other groups of people. Now, of course, there's tons of middle ground. There's tons of nuance. But when people say like, we have to lock it down because we have to save every life, they're coming from a really awesome place. But based on the idea that every resource is limited and we have to figure out how to use our resources best to create the best life as possible for as long as possible, including future concerns, all of a sudden this funding versus lives debate disappears completely, and we just have to ask ourselves, what sorts of situations are we willing to get ourselves in? What sorts of trade-offs make some sense? And that is a much more nuanced discussion where instead of being pro-quarantine or anti-quarantine, you quickly begin to realize, based on the mass amount of evidence so far gathered, that up front, like, was that article, The Hammer and the Dance? Stupid fucking name. I can't believe they named it that. They got part 2 article that talks about, let's learn how to dance. Like, people are fucking dying titling an article Dance. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So it's actually a very, very good article, right? And it says, like, up front, major quarantine for a few weeks or a month or so is a really, really good idea. And then after that, the economic costs start to outweigh everything, and also you have hospitalizations under control. So it's probably a good time to start in some reasonable way working towards opening up the economy more, while, of course, keeping tabs on infections and so on and so forth, managing the situation. Now, that view that I just presented is very close to unanimous among epidemiologists and economists, but god damn, it doesn't really tug at the heartstrings, huh? Because you get neither sides of the crazy people. The crazy people want quarantine for 18 months because of that wildly outdated Imperial College study that came out like 2 months ago. That's side number one. And everyone, by the way, who isn't for super quarantine is a fucking killer, Nazi, right? And then on the other side, in literally, unfortunately, the other side of this is Bill Gates. Let me get this straight. Hold on. Let me really, really warm this up.
Actually, let's start this. Do you like Bill Gates or not? I want your stance.
As a human being, I've never met him.
I think yeah, okay.
It's irrelevant. Let's see where Mike's going with this.
I mean, so I can tell you, like, based on my calculation of more worth, Bill Gates has produced. So for Microsoft Excel alone, I would gladly kill myself 100 times over to save like Bill Gates' finger.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, so Let me get this. Okay, here we go. So Bill Gates made the 5G towers, but he wasn't going to be able to get enough of them made to have enough people to kill because he really likes death. So, because he wants to depopulate the earth. So he went to China and started the Coronavirus Institute, faked the bat story, made coronavirus, which gives you, but it doesn't really give you coronavirus because it's really the 5G that's causing it. And then profit. Guys, what do you think? I figured it out, didn't I?
Plus forced mass vaccination.
Right.
He's not trying to
microchips come in.
When he's not trying to save Africa or whatever he's
shit.
I mean, that's a false flag. He's not saving anyone, right? He's a big fat cat at the top and he wants to do something bad. I know he's bad. I just don't know why. But 5G is sufficiently complicated enough where that could posit as an explanation for why he's bad.
That's like it's funny because it's like you say that and then I go back to your example of shooting guns at aliens.
Those people are real, man.
But the weird thing is, and like we kind of always get in this discussion, it feels like with you, but it's like you explain this thing and like you're a smart guy and you go into this, but it comes back to this. You almost have to have like a secondary job in learning economics and politics and all this stuff to have a conversation, yet fitness professionals are jumping in to say shit like that about Bill Gates. They're basically shooting their guns off, and it's just like it just seems like such a waste of fucking time and like, ill-informed almost.
My thoughts on this one, and Mike, you're actually sort of an anomaly within this. I'll explain, because you actually will spend some time involved in nuanced discussions that there's a couple of circles in social media in the fitness industry. If anyone ever sees it or gets sucked into it, there's one that tends to be much further on the left, and they tend to become a very big echo chamber. And there's a few notable individuals who like to, they got some big egos and they like to spout off there, and then they're very intolerant towards anyone who doesn't fit that. And on the other side, there's this group of people who tend to be more right-leaning. And what I find in both of those circles, the people who get in the middle of it, is very, very few of them have actually established a brand name or a great deal of success in the industry. By and large, and like I said, you're the one who seems to be able to have, you built a huge reputation, a successful business, and yet you'll still wander in there and have these conversations. Most of the rest of the big name fitness professionals, they don't spend the time on social media. They don't spend the time arguing. And my entire point to this is, to a lot of the listeners, is I'd say stay the fuck out of this shit. If you got someone who is running their mouth thinking that we need to lock this down for 18 months, ask yourself, is this really someone that you want to be spending your time absorbing on social media, scrolling social media, instead of going in and making some more instructional YouTube videos and working on that, or writing, or fucking like spend the time reading RP stuff. And going back to the first tangent you were on, one of the best things you can do with your time right now, if you've got extra time, is go get some of these RP books. They're not very expensive. They're fucking loaded with great information. You're going to come out the other side of this, a better, more skilled profession. So your thoughts on, getting caught up in these social media discussions. And then I want you to finish this all up with some ideas for how, the listeners can best use their time now to be successful as this shit eases up.
Totally. Sorry, I completely agree with you. These discussions are a gigantic waste of time for almost everyone involved. Truth be told, the reason I get into them is twofold. One, it's a bit entertaining to me in some sense. Like conversing with people is entertaining. Having discussions about logic and trying to understand the world, trying to understand people's perspectives is entertaining. And two, I'm always trying to sharpen the blade or keep it sharp for the ability to argue to convince someone or to argue to understand. And so I enter into a variety of discussions, much less than I could. So it's still a very, very rare thing for me to do with an average use of my time. I might spend like an hour or two a week engaging in these discussions at my peak times, and much, much less usually. But for me, a lot of it is because I kind of want to sharpen the tools or keep the tools sharp for how to engage with people. And when I let myself get personal or start being mean or quippy, I really beat myself up about it on purpose. And I try to get better and better at just maintaining a cool and just trying to see, try to give people a benefit of the doubt. So there's the reason I do that stuff. But I totally think that most people, including myself in an alternate universe, should not be doing this kind of engaging because it's wildly pointless, correct? And to your point of what folks in the fitness industry should and can be doing at this juncture, um, a big thing that you already said is investing in learning. I think a lot of people, specifically, for example, let's take personal trainers. Our personal trainers, especially pretty successful ones, are so busy. A lot of them lament that they don't even have time to read about new best practices and theories, ways they could become better trainers because they're busy working their asses off 12 bucks or 12 hours a day. If you're in a major city and you're a personal trainer, sometimes your take-home pay per hour is like $100, sometimes more. But like if you're a successful trainer and for each hour you work, you can make $100, man, it's tough to schedule in time to learn and update shit. You know what I mean? Like it's a cash grab and it makes total sense. But like I can make $1,200 today if I just work. So a lot of times it's really tough to stay on top of knowledge. And now you've bought yourself, or well, coronavirus, thank you, bat from China. The bat bought you some time to be able to invest in knowledge and really revamp a ton of your approaches. So absolutely learning is a super great idea right now. Listen to tons of podcasts, watch tons of YouTube videos on this stuff, read a bunch of books, read a bunch of articles, perhaps rework some of your templates. A lot of folks train people online. They've been training people less. A lot of people can rework their templates, their approaches, their materials that they send out. Now is the time. It's kind of downtime. And, the fitness industry will be back. It'll be better than ever, whatever number of months down the road. You might as well have used this time to make yourself better prepared to do your best job versus using this time to just be in despair about how you don't have as much income anymore, so on and so forth. So absolutely a time to improve and get better. And it's a time to try to sharpen your willpower by sticking to your own fitness goals and your own diet goals in a time of very restricted and limited options, because you may figure out a whole bunch, not just through practical approaches of, oh wow, now I really know how to do dumbbell rows because I've never had to do them for this long. First of all. Second of all, you could figure out a lot about your psychology and thus other people's psychology of how to work through difficult problems. So, because sometimes us in the fitness industry, we've been doing our fitness bullshit for so long, when our clients say, it's tough for me to make it to the gym, or it's tough for me to get these meals going. Some of us are like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, this is easy shit. You just do it. But like when we're thrown a huge curveball in our way of life and we adapt to it, we learn through that adaptation of how something can be very difficult and how to overcome it, best practices, so on and so forth. Not only can we generate more empathy for people that come in from a tough place when times are normal, we can have a lot of means of helping them and be like, hey, listen, I know where you're coming from. I've been in tough situations too. Maybe let's work on slowly doing just a couple things well this week, seeing where that goes. Like just an example. So it's absolutely the time for bettering your skills, sharpening the sword, because when you go back to training people and you go back to work in the fitness industry, or see an increase in your client load or whatever, it's going to be back to just using what you have and much less
learning. I thought I wanted to throw in there. Sort of lost it. I'll just sort of say that I went back. I was gifted a redo of PN Precision Nutrition's Level 1 coaching certification, which I actually think is really good. So I've actually been blasting through that with my spare time. I've also been reading books on writing. I've been trying to put more time into it. Here's what I was going to say. I found that you can kind of go one of two ways. And one is an upward spiral of good attitude, and one is a downward spiral of negativity. Is if you find yourself, even though this is more challenging, we're more stressed out, it's a little harder to devote our willpower to doing good things. If we put that time and effort into study, working out constructive things, then you feel really good about it. And then it perpetuates that good spiral. If in reverse, you spend 2 days completely on the couch, you're doing a lot of drinking, your eating is really poor, and that's not that extreme. I mean, that's a lot of people this fucking pandemic, let alone with it. So you start getting into that cycle, and I've noticed that if I have a day where I don't do anything, which was the early part of this as I was dealing with more stress and anxiety, because like,
sure,
God, what the fuck is going on in the world? Then you start feeling really shitty. It's a little harder to get out of bed. And then it becomes a really nasty downward cycle. So if any of you guys are finding yourself in that downward spiral, it's not a bad idea to just like try to schedule something positive and fuck it, force yourself to do it a little bit, gain a little bit of momentum in the other direction.
Yeah, watch that. Actually, before
Tiger King was tough.
Did you watch
Yes.
it? Yeah. Okay.
Did you
like
guys
it?
watch it?
No,
I loved it, but like I mean, I love it for what it is. I didn't try
You
to
sure
film
can't love for anything else. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
He married his high school sweetheart, so Dean didn't get out in the world and experience a lot of the crazy shit that was out there. So he's living vicariously.
I was a
through.
bouncer. I've seen these things. Like I've seen matches. I've
Yes,
seen
right,
that
exactly.
done.
That's what we're really talking about here.
Like it's just like yeah. But that yeah. What do you think about Tiger King before we let you go?
So it was really funny. One of our longtime RPOG clients, Trevor Fulbright, he's hilarious. He's from Oklahoma. So right after Tiger King came out, he like razzed me about something on Instagram, and I was like, no, don't you razz me. You explain Tiger King. And he's like, man, I don't know, meth. I'll just say meth. And boy, does that explain a lot.
It does.
You know what? Go ahead.
I was gonna say it does. Like it's about
Yeah.
math. Like I know it's not, but it is.
Yeah, if you take meth out of that equation, a whole lot of that just doesn't happen. It's funny because it's almost like a symptom catalog of meth, like paranoia, delusions of grandeur, insane amounts of energy for no reason, real cyclical crash and burn, poor use of money, meth. So I will say that watching Tiger King was a chore for me because my wife and I, along with Jared Feather, who's staying with us at the moment, we watched it. Jared had already seen it, so he saw it twice. And he thought it was great. It was laborious for me because when I watch movies or any sort of entertaining things, I like to be able to identify with a character and be like, here's the good guy. Like this is a good person here. There's no fucking good people in Tiger King. They're all completely insane, vile fucks, except for like the guy with no legs. He was pretty cool. And then the guy with like the long hair took care of the animals. He was cool, but he was also clearly like had drugs.
No, he didn't. So did you see the afterwards one?
No.
He said he's like ever since he's been out of jail, he's been sober. He's just fucked. He's like, I'm just fucked, but I actually don't drink or do drugs. And everyone's calling me meth head on Instagram and stuff. It's like it kind of hurtful because like, I don't actually do that. And he was like almost in tears, and I was like, oh, sorry.
The long guy.
Yeah, the long hair guy, the zookeeper or whatever. He got just on like social media, and he's like, I don't go on.
Because he looked like he was super drunk for the one shot, right? He was like passing out.
And maybe he was lying. I just felt bad because he was like,
because he's fucking lying, because he was on drugs on video.
Well, it's like when you hear hoofbeats, I'm not thinking zebras. Sorry, it's probably a lot more simple. It's probably
you know what I'm saying. So yeah,
I like to have some hope after watching that.
That's exactly what I didn't have after watching Tiger King is hope. And it was like the lady saving the tigers very likely killed her husband, so she's fucked up. And then the guy himself, Joe Exotic or whatever, I mean, fuck. But like, one thing I'll say is that like, boy, is he so like such an interesting reflection of modern America, where like if he was a straight man, it would be so easy to be like, this is like the right-wing America gone insane, like trading in animals, like shooting guns.
It goes back to your point before you get you to tell us where he had it. It's like he went for governor and 90% of people voted for him, which is crazy. But all those people were shooting guns at aliens during Independence Day.
100%, every single one.
Yeah.
Right. You would think like this is it. Like this is insane. But then like he's gay, and you're like if you're fair far and left and you watch Tiger King, you can't even be fucking conservative at. You're like, oh, it's so nice that like he's married to a guy, but then he's like married to two guys, and you're like, I don't even know how I feel about polygamy. It's like the whole thing is just wild, and like I almost want to like make sure the whole world sees it, and I just want like as a real sick joke to just lie to the world. Like if you've never been to, the average person is Joe Exotic. It's very, very similar to Joe Exotic. So if you come to America, expect most people to be like this. Wouldn't that be great?
Well, it would solve the immigration problem.
No, for sure. Oh my God. You mean solved by having more immigrants come to America because they're so ready to be a part of this awesome country where Joe Exotic is the average citizen.
Yeah, or exactly the opposite. Well, they'll all end up in Canada. And Trudeau will be like, hey, you guys can all come here.
That's nice.
Yeah, no shit. Let everybody know how they can find you if they're not already following your shit. It's been great to have you on here, Mike.
Thank you so much for having me on. Probably the best way to find me is Instagram at rpdrmike, rpdrmike, and then Renaissance Periodization. Tough to spell, but if you do a YouTube search for Mike Israetel, then the RP channel comes up, and we're putting out a ton of YouTube content, a ton of instructional videos, a bunch of stuff about how to take exercises, modify them for hypertrophy, and make sure you're not screwing them up. So yeah, give it a look on there.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you. We had you mentioned Gabrielle. We had Gabrielle, for everybody who's listening, on a while back, and Gabby's just cool. She's an awesome person, and you've been on a bunch of times. If people want to explore more of this stuff, you were on with James. Actually, I should reach out to James because we're trying to get a whole bunch of people on right now. We're doing 2 a week, and so I figured I should.
Cool.
I'm just doing Tiger King reviews, like so.
James will have a lot of those, I promise you.
Like, you're the only one to indulge that question, so I'm like very happy you came on, because I was like,
what? Everyone else hasn't?
A lot of people haven't watched it, and I was like,
idiots.
People are busy doing stuff, so obviously we're not busy. But I'm like, it's just like you sait's a reflection. It's a learning experience for.
I envy those people because I don't want to remember Tiger King. I want to be like them.
I'm never. You can't unring that bell, so I'm not.
No, you can't.
You haven't watched it either, have you?
Don't.
There's
don't do it.
Shit that is floating around out there that I'm just not going to do. Like, in fact, I almost, as a rule, stay away from Netflix documentaries. I think the only major documentary that I ever saw was probably the progenitor of all this crap, which would have been Super Size Me. All these other weird health documentaries. I never watched.
You're blaming Super Size Me for Tiger King.
Reasonable.
It's actually, you know what? Actually, like, it's not that far fetched.
That's like
right.
That's how. What's an example?
It started as a thing.
Harry Potter is the reason why we have the Maze Runner, right? Or all those other like teen books that became big things for a while, right? And then if you want to really go back that far, we have Harry Potter because we had Lord of the Rings. So you can draw these linear progressions as to why
responsible for Tiger King. Gotcha.
Well, not
he said it.
He said, like, you basically said that. So I don't know. I would ask Mike, but I know Mike has to go. But Mike would have a pretty long, logical answer, and we could have another podcast on this. So it's good having you out, man. I know we kind of went everywhere with that, but it was nice to catch up and kind of just get your state of stuff. And yeah, I think everyone can kind of learn from, even just thinking like you is going to be helpful in some form or fashion, even if they can't think all the way like you, which is also probably helpful.
Yeah, for sure helpful. Good God, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. Guys, thank you so much for having me on.
Real pleasure. We'll be dropping this one on.
Shut up and sit down.